Hi. Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Nomadic Network. Feel free to turn your cameras on. I don't think that was automatic, so go ahead and turn your camera on if you'd like. And I'm going to share my screen for a second to tell you a little bit about the Nomadic Network. And while I do that, I would love for you to find the chat. And I would love for you to write in the chat where you're calling in from, what number TNN event this is for you, and like what one of your bucket list travel items is. Like, what's an epic adventure that you would love to go on? Okay, I am going to share my screen really quick. All right, so we already have Dave and Deb, by the way, and Nomadic Matt on, so I'm going to be very quick with this little intro. My name is Erica Hackman, and I help Matt run these events for the Nomadic Network. This is our live community events arm. We started it just before COVID, and like every other company, we had to pivot from live in-person events to virtual events. And the blessing in disguise that this was we were able to actually bring speakers from all over the world to teach travel lovers like you in different cities all over the world, how to travel cheaper, better, longer, and more. And that's the whole reason why we started. We wanted to connect travelers to resources and other travelers to keep them inspired and keep them going. So we've done over 250 events since the beginning of the coronavirus. So this is, something we just love to do. And we are very excited to have Dave and Deb on here today. A few things to keep in mind. You can definitely turn your camera on. You will be muted throughout their presentation and their talk with Nomadic Matt, but I believe in the second half of this, we will actually let you unmute yourself so you can ask them questions. But if a question comes into your mind as they're talking, feel free to pop it into the chat. Be sure to type the word question in front of it so that I can, find those pretty easily and I can ask them at the end, or you'll be invited to unmute yourself and ask the question yourself. Also, feel free to use the chat to connect with each other, share your relevant experiences, anything you want. This is a community event, so just pretend it's like we're in person and you're whispering to the next person, except you're whispering to everybody via a chat. Dave and Deb, just like all of our speakers, are doing this out of the kindness of their heart and their passion for sharing their knowledge with you. So we are very grateful that they're here, and we encourage you to connect with them, follow them, and interact with them. One of the things that we really love to see is people really connecting with our speakers. That's why we bring them on here, so that you can learn about them and then grow your relationships with them and follow them and ask them questions, even if it's years later. We are here to learn, satiate your wanderlust, and have fun. I wanted to invite you to our exclusive membership network, nomadic.matt-plus, sorry about that. That's where you can enjoy all the replays, past, present, and future TNN replays. And also, we'd love to invite you to follow the Nomadic Network on Instagram, and you can do that easily there. I will pass the mic to Matt right now so he can introduce our amazing speakers, Dave and Deb of the ThePlanetD. All right.
Don't forget to use those fancy QR codes that Erica set up, because, they're fancy. And now we're all used to QR codes again. Greetings from a hostile common room here in Gjirokastër, Albania. Forgive the dark light. I'm trying. It's not well lit here. I have like this backlight, but whatever. All right, so not only super excited to welcome Dave and Deb, but super conscious of all the people in the common area listening to me as I do this. I've known Dave and Deb since the early days, 2010, 9, something like that. Forever, really, forever in the blogging world. And I've seen them in many countries around the world. I ran into them in Romania. I've seen them in Canada. I've seen them in England, Spain, the US.
Yeah, everywhere.
A lot of places. I feel like there's more countries too that we could add onto that list. Sweden. And so I love what they do. They bring a lot of adventure travel to people and really make it accessible. Their focus is not so much backpacking, hosteling like me, but more like getting out there and doing adventure activities, epic road trips. I met them when they were doing the Mongol Rally. They've kayaked in the Antarctica. They're always doing these sort of like massive, like just epic trips, which is why we're talking to them today about how do you put these together. Even beyond blogging, they've managed to secure sponsorship for these trips. So it's something if they don't bring it up, I'm gonna ask them a question about later. How do regular people do this stuff when without a platform, right? You only think of you can only get sponsors if you're like a big dealer or something like that, but that's not necessarily true. And so really excited to have them on board talking about all the epic trips they do that I don't. They take great photographs, they do video, like they're just a bomb, and they're really nice people too. And so that helps. It's good not to be jerks. And so it's really good to be able to call them friends and to have them on today. So I'm really excited to have a short presentation for you. I will ask some questions, and then as Erica said, you will be able to ask them questions. Yeah, that's it. So I'll stop rambling and mute myself and let Dave and Deb get to the meat of it.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks so much, both to Erica and Matt, for having us. We're like super honored to be on here. It's so cool. Yeah, Matt's one of the first books and blogs we ever read, so it's pretty exciting for us. And we're excited to talk to you today about epic ways to travel the world. And like Matt said, we're going to be talking for about 15 minutes. Then we're going to have some chats about epic travels because Matt and Erica are epic travelers too. So we don't want to make this a big conversation. And yeah, let's get started.
All right. Well, adventure has always really been the foundation of our travels. In fact, we live by the motto, adventure is for everyone. But there have definitely been a few epic adventures that have really changed the course of our lives. And we're going to talk about 4 of those today. There's a lot more. You can ask questions about it later on, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, no, we started our blog in 2008. And like I said, I remember one of the first books I read was How to Make Money Blogging by Nomadic Matt. And that helped me a lot. But before we even started our blog, we had been traveling really extensively. We had been for 8 years of traveling to about 40 different countries and never thought of making it a career. But for us, travel really has always played a really important role in our lives to make it richer and better.
And what we found over those 8 years is that whenever we had the most fulfilling or most rewarding travels, there were always when we learned a new skill or pushed ourselves out of our comfort zone. Sure, when we were bumming around, backpacking around Southeast Asia and South America, that was a lot of fun. But we got to the point where we felt that we needed a purpose to make our travels even more fulfilling.
And for us, that purpose was always getting a new challenge and taking on a new skill. We'd always look at the next place we're going to go and we're going to go, oh, what is that adventure that they do in there? Is it scuba diving in the Cayman Islands, or are we going to go mountain biking in Nepal? So we were always taking on all these new adventures and learning new skills. And we always joked that we were these master, jack of all trades, and we were masters of none of them. But we looked for ways to up the ante and, turn those skills into a career someday, somehow. We didn't know yet.
Yeah, and we did finally sort of get to a point where we wanted to do more. We wanted to take the next step. So instead of just making adventure part of our travels, we wanted to make the adventure the main focus of the travel. And that's where we came up with the idea that is the basis of our blog, which is an ordinary couple doing extraordinary things. And we thought, what easier way to kick things off than by doing the Tour d'Afrique?
Yeah, the Tour d'Afrique is a cycling race through Africa. And we thought that this would be a great place to start because Everyone's been locked down for 18 months, and a lot of people have been feeling really bad that they haven't been able to travel, ourselves included. But we wanted to give a little bit of inspiration and hope, because it was an entire year of planning and figuring out how we were going to do this tour to Afrique. And we wanted to let people know that you don't have to travel overnight. Actually, you can go traveling overnight if you haven't done if you're doing an epic adventure. It takes a year of planning. So if you want to do one, start planning now for 2022.
Yeah, definitely. So what is the Tour d'Afrique? Well, the Tour d'Afrique is the world's longest cycling race. So you cycle from Cairo to Cape Town. It's 12,000 kilometers. It took us 4 months to do it. And truthfully, it was really hard. Yeah, definitely.
A little bit. And we had two goals during that time. We wanted to win the race. It was a race at the time. Or we wanted to get something called EFI, which is cycling every fabulous inch. It was a different world once you reach the bottom of the country. You know,
different word.
F was not so fabulous at the time, but that's what we wanted to get. But before we even decided if we could even win the race, we had to prepare and train, and that was a year.
Yeah, and you know, the preparing and training, this was our first time taking on something like this. So we had to buy bikes. We had to learn how to fix our bikes because, you know, hey, we were going to be in the middle of Africa. No one was coming here to help us out if something went wrong.
You're doing a good job there, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Looking over my shoulder, I guess I'm the one doing all the fixing.
Yeah.
You know, we also had to train because, believe it or not, we were not avid cyclists before we took this on, and that's sort of a running theme through a lot of our epic travels is we do push ourselves out of our comfort zone. So besides just getting ready physically and mentally, we also had to figure out how we were going to make it worth the investment of our time and money. What were we going to use this for?
Yeah, because at that time we had been traveling for about 8 years, splitting our time between our careers and travel, and we wanted to make it a business one day. So we had to figure out how to get sponsorship with no followers. We had to figure out how to try and make some money and make it a career. And the one thing that we always talked about, how we made it work, was we were fearless. We didn't have any worry that it wasn't going to happen. We were full of confidence, and we approached newspapers, national newspapers, without writing experience. Now, we took a writing course to get that experience, but they loved the idea and said, yeah, you can write for us. We got on TV, we hired a publicist, and we had 0 followers at the time. We didn't even have a blog. Yeah. So it could be done. And we always say to people, if you have a great idea and have all the confidence in the world, you can make it happen.
Yeah, most definitely. And I remember that after that 1 year of crazy training and planning and all that kind of stuff, we were standing on the starting line in Cairo, and we couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe that, man, we had done all this planning and actually had worked out, and we were here. And a lesson we learned throughout all that time is really that if you do have a unique idea and you have the motivation, that you really can make anything happen. And we've sort of taken that mentality throughout everything that we do in our life.
And we wanted to start with the Tour d'Afrique because we wanted to let people know that this is a great way to start because it is an organized race. We had support. We didn't know the first thing about getting visas for an overland trip that, you had to get back to back ahead of time. We didn't want to camp down the continent of Africa by ourselves. We had safety in number, and we had the route planned out for us. So this was a really great introduction. And if you're going to do an epic trip, something like this is a great way to get those skills so that you can do it eventually on your own when you're ready.
Yeah, when you're looking for an epic trick, look for something where one part of it is sort of looked after you, especially if you're easing your way into it. I think having the logistics of cycling the continent of Africa looked after really allowed us to focus on the physical challenge, which was obviously incredibly grueling. I mean, when we started this, every day you're cycling 120 kilometers for 120 days. Yeah, those aren't pants, that's dirt. So we learned a lot. What we learned is that, your mind can really overcome the physical challenges of your body. And that's something that I think about with every adventure that I'm doing that's physically demanding, is that I know that my mind can allow my body to do things that I didn't think I'd be able to do.
And this really introduced us to a really different way of traveling. We had done the backpacker trail through Southeast Asia and Central and South America, but this was the first time we really got into the middle of nowhere where people had never seen tourists before. And it really gave us a window into the everyday lives of people in Africa and just how warm their hearts were and how giving they were. When we cycled by, they, have us pull over and talk to us and offer us tea. And it was the best way to really see how you can travel without being on that regular well-trodden path. And we really said that's how we want to travel from now on.
Yeah, definitely. And in the end, it showed us that we really could do anything by setting goals and accomplishing those goals. We set out to win. We set out to get EFI. We did both of those things. Deb won the women's race, and I got EFI. And I find that, if you set goals and when you accomplish them, it establishes this incredible amount of confidence that you can use as a springboard for the next stage in your life. So after that, we decided that, we really love this feeling. So we want to have a goal in our travels and do at least one epic trip each year.
And being the jack of all trades, we didn't want to do another cycling race. So the next thing we did was the Mongol Rally. And that's the first time we met Matt in person. We were in traveling from
1 second. Can you move back a slide?
Yeah. How skinny Dave looked?
Dave, this is like a different person.
It totally is. Dave lost 30.
No, I lost 40 pounds on that
race. He was
race.
so skinny. He was skin and
so
bones.
I weighed like 145 pounds there. I know it doesn't even look like me. I look like a bobblehead.
Yeah.
If you want to lose some weight, it was the best weight loss in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
I ended up coming home with 3 parasites. I had a knee infection, cellulitis. It was crazy fun adventure, but that's a whole other talk.
Yeah. So like, as we said, all adventures don't necessarily have to be physical. Logistical things are something else that can be a huge challenge. And we found that out when we did do the Mongol Rally. And the Mongol Rally is basically a charity rally where you drive an inappropriate, crappy little car from England to Mongolia. And I know that sounds like it could be pretty easy, but it was another year of planning and another huge challenge for us.
Yeah, unlike the Tour d'Afrique, it wasn't planned. We had to get from point A to point B, and all we had to do was we knew we had to drive from England to Mongolia. So this time we had to figure out our own visas. We had to get our own accommodation figured out. We had to plan our route. And we had 2 other teammates, Sherry Ott of Otworld and Rick Griffin of Midlife Road Trip. We were all on different continents trying to figure out how we were going to travel a year from now. Once again, it was another epic year of planning. And that's what we went through. Dave,
and when I think about it, the planning of the route and that kind of stuff was relatively easy in hindsight, in that we could do that over Skype. But because we were scattered all over the world, we were taking a kickboxing course in Thailand, which made it very difficult to buy a car, because you had to buy a car for this and you had to buy it in England. So none of us were in England. So basically you had to go through and try and find out how to purchase a car that you will never see and drive it from England to Mongolia. So that was a huge stress, I think, more stress than actually planning out the route.
Yeah, and this was our first foray into really finding sponsors. Now, this was 2010. We were actually going to do the it was 2011. We were going to do the 10th anniversary this year, but because of COVID, it didn't happen. But we didn't know how to get sponsorship before. But once again, we just pooled all our numbers with our teammates. We put packages together, and then we approached everywhere. We approached outdoor stores. We approached local newspapers. My hometown newspaper even did a feature on me of Otterville, Ontario. We were just getting all of this information where we were approaching anyone we could to get publicity. And we started getting sponsors. The more after that year of letting people know what we were doing, we actually started getting some pretty big sponsors on board. It started small with a SIM card. We were thrilled with that SIM card. And then we started building from there.
I think once you get one thing on board, then, other things start to take interest. It's sort of getting that first one. And once you get it, then sponsorship can really start to roll from there. So with, a lot of that legwork done and everything sort of planned out how we were going to do it, and that was behind us, we were definitely ready for the next challenge, which was when we actually got in the car and started to drive.
Yeah, and I'm really glad we took an entire year to plan, because we did have all of our camping gear figured out. We had all of our border crossings and dates figured out, because we did not want to have to deal with that on the road, because we had to deal with corruption and breakdowns and 12-hour border crossings where we're trying not to pay €8,000 to a corrupt official. We had all of that to deal with on the road. But that's the great thing about an adventure. You get into that because that's what you want to deal with. Like, I loved it. It was so much fun to always see, like, how can we talk our way out of not paying this cop that just pulled us over?
Yeah, well, because it was always trying to overcome the challenges that come to you day by day, and then things that you're not necessarily planned for. Like, I remember going into when we crossed over into Kazakhstan and into Mongolia, all of a sudden there's no roads. So we're like, okay, great. What do we do now? Well, luckily, part of our jack of all trades came into play, and we did have some orienteering and map reading experience. Luckily, because we had to put that to the test. When you have no roads, you break out the compass and you head east, and you try and pick a track that works. So, I mean, this was a logistical challenge, but also all these different things that you face when you're on the road were part of making it such an incredible experience.
And I learned a new skill on that. I learned how to change a tire, because we changed probably our tires at least 20 times. I'd never changed a tire before in my life. I always had CAA, we're Canadian, so AAA.
Yeah.
So, but you do these adventures for us, for the payoff. It was incredible to be all alone in the middle of the Gobi Desert with not another tourist in sight, and just have camels and mountains surrounding you, and then just the odd local farmer or family coming up. And that's really one of the most special experiences. That's why we wanted to do it again this year, and maybe we'll be able to do it next year.
Yeah, you never know. We're often approached by locals like this guy, and you don't really have experiences like this unless you're doing something where you're very remote and on your own. Where he rode up to our camp, he brought us arag, which is fermented mare's milk.
Yum.
He didn't speak any English, but literally we spent hours together sitting around the fire, just sort of trying to talk and communicate. And it's memories like that and experiences like that you don't necessarily get unless you put yourself in those situations. And those are the memories that last a lifetime. And one of the reasons why we love doing things that are epic and long.
Yeah. And Mongolia, it's totally horse country, which brings us to our next destination next door is Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah. Now, we talked a lot about adventures that have taken up a lot of time, that take like a year to plan and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't necessarily have to be true. We've done quite a few life-changing things that weren't so long, where it's more based around the uniqueness of the destination or the activity that made them stand out to us.
And you'll notice a pattern. One of the useless skills that we acquired over the year was horseback riding, or so we thought it was useless at the time. We took our first horseback riding trip way back in 1996. There's Dave. Matt, if you thought that one picture was weird before, look at him.
Yeah, that's me up in the left-hand corner there.
Where we went horseback riding in the Dominican Republic. And that was on our honeymoon, and we sucked. Dave was actually told he rides like a sack of potatoes. And being the people that we are, we did not like that we sucked. So we got home from our honeymoon and we went, we're going to take horseback riding lessons. We didn't know why. It's just something we wanted to do. And surprisingly, horseback riding has become a huge part of our travels. We've done it on 6 continents around the world, and it's one of our favorite ways to travel.
Yeah, so when Kyrgyzstan approached us to see if we could help map out trekking routes in the country, we actually turned it around and pitched back to them, hey, we would love to do this from the back of a horse, because Kyrgyzstan really is the land of horses. And what better way to showcase this beautiful landscape and these routes than by doing it through basically traditional transportation. When we travel, we always want to try and immerse in the country's culture as much as possible and find a connection between the adventure and the country that we're in. And it is said that, the horses are the wings of the Kyrgyz. So it seemed like sort of a natural way to put those two things together and make it unique.
Yeah, now Kyrgyzstan is one of the best trekking destinations in the world, but going through it on horseback was really unique. We spent several days in the Jurgelen Mountains with local farmers. This wasn't, we didn't have regular just tour guides that were, going, let's take you through the mountains. These were farmers that worked these lands, that owned the cattle, that owned the fields, who took their time away from their ranch and took us through the mountains. And to see it through their eyes and see how proud they were of their land, it was just so special.
And I remember our guide there, the guy who's actually sitting in the front, he was a local farmer. He was taking us through basically the migration route of his horses and his cattle that he'd done for a very, very long time. And it was just amazing to see this unassuming guy. There wasn't a lot of communication going going on. We did have a guide that helped translate things, but he was very quiet, rode quite slowly. And then I remember getting back to the town, and they had this huge local festival where he was like this star. I couldn't believe it. He came out in all his regalia. He was like the star of goat polo. It was just like, it was amazing to see the transformation and be involved in all the cultural things that were happening and that happened in their everyday life, and experiencing that and pairing that with something that's so epic, like riding a horse through these tracks that haven't been explored by different travelers.
Yeah, and when we were thinking about putting this trip together, that's what we wanted to make as one of our themes, was that when you're thinking about your next grand adventure, try to think about places that make the trek or the epic adventure unique, and what will help you immerse in the culture and understand the destination better. Like when we were in Kyrgyzstan, we joined cattle drives. People were moving their cattle from the mountains to the valley for the winter, and we joined in and helped herd the cattle. We were stopping at yurts for tea and snacks. So it really gave us another perspective and a unique way of traveling rather than just walking through.
And I do think there's something special about experiencing something that, a lot of other people have in their lives. And that's one of the things that these sort of adventures have done for us. And I know that we mentioned in Kyrgyzstan that it's great for hiking, to not trek,
or try something
but
new.
Trekking is pretty awesome as well. It can be an incredible way to immerse in the culture depending on where you're doing the trekking. And it's a great way to push yourself beyond your limits, and that's sort of a running theme with all these epic adventures.
Yeah, I'd never trade summiting Mount Kilimanjaro or climbing to Everest Base Camp. These were just great ways to push yourself to the limit. And it's so emotional when you reach your destination. And trekking in Bhutan does a perfect mix of putting that trek with culture, because Bhutan is a land of happiness. People live in the mountains. We went to the Highlander Festival and met the king in Bhutan after trekking up to the top of a mountain. And we were actually going to talk all about Bhutan today, but then we thought, this is an epic adventure talk. So we thought we'd take it even just a little bit step further.
Yeah, so you can't really have a list of epic travels without traveling somewhere in the dead of winter, or where weather is plays a huge part in the challenge. And believe it or not, this trek that we did up in Canada was not only physically demanding, but it was also incredibly cultural.
Yeah, and how was it cultural? Well, we were following the route of the Hudson Bay Fur Trading Company. Now, Canada and a lot of America was built by the fur traders of Europe, sending the pelts back to Europeans. And we did something called the Lure of the North, where we followed the fur trading route for 11 days in minus 30-degree weather up in the Arctic watershed of Canada. And let me tell you, that gave us an absolute, truly understanding and appreciation for what the early settlers went through.
Yeah, most definitely. This is not something that I would recommend you kick off your epic adventures with, because it's demanding in every way, shape, and form. It actually all started off in a place called Sudbury. And if you're in Canada, you'll know that's about 6 hours north of Toronto here in Ontario. We went up there, we hopped on a train, a thing called the Bud car, which is a small little car on the back of a train. And we drove 12 hours north by train, where they dropped us off in the middle of the wilderness at a mile marker. And we proceeded to hike 100 kilometers in 10 days in the dead of winter, but using all traditional means.
Yeah, and we thought the Tour d'Afrique was a tough physical challenge, but this 11 days was the toughest 11 days of my life. We were trekking 8 hours a day.
I think you cried.
I cried many times. I
did.
I had tears, frozen tears on my cheeks. We were 8 hours a day of trekking in the snow, and we had to trek in snowshoes. We were breaking trail. That's not a trail that was made for us. That was just whoever was in front would break the trail. If we took our snowshoes off, we were waist deep in snow. We had to cut our way through forests. We were camping on frozen lakes and hiking over moving frozen water. It was terrifying. We all fell through at least once, all of us. But once we did that, I felt like I could achieve anything.
Yeah, and a small note, like the snowshoes and the moccasins that we were in, we made those before we went. So it's not something that you bought at a store. They were all handmade. That was part of the experience. We were pretty skeptical in wearing moccasins in minus 30-degree weather, but man, they were really warm. It was incredibly surprising. And after those 8 hours of trekking every day. You don't get in. There's no one waiting with canapes for you. No hot tub. We get to the end and we start 3 hours of camp setup. After that, so we're out chopping wood. We have to chip through the ice to get water. We're stomping out snow to go to the bathroom. Who knew that you had to do that? But hey, man, you got to put on your snowshoes to go to the can in the middle of the night. Then you do a pre out where you're going to go to the washrooms. So
yeah, that was our camp.
Completely remote and incredibly challenging. And this sort of gives you an idea of what we carried. That's a prospector's tent. There was a wood stove, all of our gear, all on this 9-foot sled.
And the one piece of advice we want to give, and when you're doing something like this, is you have to hire an experienced guide. If Dave and I just said, hey, let's go hike the Arctic watershed by ourselves, we literally would have died. But our guides right here, we have our guide, they were so experienced. Kai, who you can barely see, she has the goggles on. She was in the last season of Alone on National Geographic. And I don't know if you've watched it. I don't want to say where she placed, but she is a true adventurer. And actually I had to laugh when Dave said there's no canapes. She had canapes waiting for us after we were done stamping. You'd be like, any canapes, anybody? So anyway, don't do anything like this unless you hire a guide. But if you hire a guide that is safe and takes care of you, it can be the most life-changing experience you'll ever have.
Yeah, so those are just a few of the epic adventures that we've done over a long time. And, you know, it doesn't really matter whether you get out there and travel or do an adventure by bike, by car, by horse, by foot. As long as you get out there and you push yourself beyond your limits and you reach your goals, that you'll find that you will inspire yourself to live an unconventional life, and your new outlook will definitely rub off and inspire others. At least, you know, that's what you hope, and it's sort of what it's done for us.
Yeah. So those are a few of them. I think we might have done a little bit more than 15 minutes. I apologize. But if you have any questions or want to just bounce some ideas off each other, or you know, let us know. That's the end of our presentation. We can be found on ThePlanetD everywhere.
Yeah.
So
all right.
That's that.
Over to you guys.
We're going to stop our share.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
We're back.
And I'm back.
Hopefully people are still around.
Yeah, everyone's still here.
Awesome. Awesome.
So one thing I want to ask right off the bat is, I noticed on the tour de Afrique, Kenya didn't have a line through it.
Yeah, the year that we...
Yeah, what happened the year that we went is there was political unrest there. There was a coup happening in Nairobi, and we were advised not to go there. So we took that time. There were 7 days that we weren't able to go through that country. So we took that time to go and climb Kilimanjaro. So and add another adventure in there. So there was no rest, because, you know, really we were literally we were in the best shape of our lives because we were halfway through cycling then. So we thought, why not take our time off and go climb a mountain?
And that is one of the things you have to deal with when you're traveling. Like, I know that the Tour d'Afrique, they still do it. It's not a race anymore, because who would be crazy enough to put your head down and race like that? But they're always changing the routes because the world is so unstable. You're always having to figure out your routes. Just like even the Mongol Rally. At the time, we could have gone through Iran. We can't go through Iran anymore. So when you're doing these epic adventures, you're always having to be fluid and go with the warnings that are out there.
So what did you do with yourself? Like, when you get to the Kenyan border, do you just like ship your bikes ahead?
Yeah, well, that was the beauty of it being supported. So the trucks and the guys who were doing the support things, we put all of our stuff on the trucks, and they drove it through drove it through Kenya and met us at the border of Malawi there, where we continued the race.
And that was true for like everyone. So nobody got like penalized.
No, it was because that's the only year that it happened. So, and I know they've changed a few things since. Like, I know when there was an issue in Sudan and stuff like that, they had to reroute some things. But yeah, they're just always keeping aware of what's going on with the political situations and adjusting the route accordingly.
Yeah, and for a while there, they didn't start in Cairo when the whole Arab Spring was happening. They started in Ethiopia. So
So how do you like get some nuts and bolts stuff here, like for the attendees here? Like, how do you decide, like, which epic trip to take. Like everything's an epic trip in some ways, but like,
Yeah.
if we're talking about these massive long trips, what are some of the things you do just in your planning process to sort of narrow down what to do, where to go, and just decide, okay, we're gonna do this one or any epic trip, really? Like, what's your thought process and planning process?
Well, one of the things too, I just want to say that we go by the motto "Adventure is for everyone," because like what you just said, an epic trip is different for everybody. So we started out just thinking, oh, we're going to have to one up the Tour d'Afrique and one up the Mongol Rally and do a higher and higher, and then that's not sustainable for one thing, and it's also not relatable for everybody. So we go by, first of all, what we're interested in. The Tour d'Afrique we literally did because we were depressed that we were splitting our time between traveling and working, and we love travel so much. We said, how can we make this a career? So we just made a toast on New Year's Eve and said, we got to do something epic next year. And we saw a newspaper article about a guy who did the Tour d'Afrique a couple of years ago, and we went, let's do that, and then, okay.
And I think from then, like, our process now is very much about looking at something, the uniqueness of what the adventure is going to be, and trying to do something that not a lot of people have done, or not a lot of people would think of doing. I think that is a big factor nowadays. When we did start out in the Tour d'Afrique, it really was more about just looking for something that was epic and amazing, whereas now we want to look for something that's unique, but also involves some sort of challenge, whether it be physical, logistical, anything like that. So sort of goes from uniqueness, what sort of challenge is going to happen, and then how much planning is going to be involved when I look at the process of how we break down.
But I think it also has to do with the destination too, because we were always thinking about like what's cool in this destination. Because I'd love to trek across Greenland one day, but by doing cross-country skiing. We think about like the way we did in Kyrgyzstan with horses, and that's kind of how the Mongol Rally came about. We originally wanted to ride a horse across Mongolia, but then Sherry, our friend from Oxworld, she said, why don't you do the Mongol Rally and I'll do it with you? And we were like, okay, so we are always trying to find the culture or uniqueness as well. Like something we really want to do is a road trip down from the North America straight down south. And maybe that doesn't have anything to do culturally, but that's just kind of an epic thing that we've always wanted to do. So it all depends. Yeah.
So when
that answered okay?
Yeah, perfect. So when you're thinking about epic trips, are you really thinking about these multi-month, maybe multi-year trips, or is that how you approach it? Like, what is
at first, but then at first it was like that, but then we, like Dave was saying, like, it started being just what is like riding a horse through mountains. That was a real challenge for us, but that was only 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
So it didn't have to be, but it was really life-changing, and you can have something incredible just for a short amount of time as well. The biggest piece of advice we always say is to just do baby steps. Like before we did the Tour d'Afrique, we had been traveling for 8 years. So we had a lot of experience. We had already done jungle trekking. We had already felt comfortable camping in remote places. So we kind of built on all those skills over the years. So by the time we went and cycled the continent, we felt comfortable meeting new cultures and experiencing new destinations. So we always just build on it and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. The length of the trip doesn't necessarily define how great the adventure is.
Yeah.
And we sort of take that factor out of it now and or that's further down the list when we're looking at different adventures that we're going to do. The length of the trip, you don't have to spend 6 months of your life doing something in order for it to be life-changing. It can be 6 days, it could be a week, it could be 6 months. It all depends what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, like there's something I want to do that the adventurous, I just saw, they do something called the Monkey Run, and it's in Western Africa. And it's just a couple of weeks long, but it's where you have to drive a little inappropriate, a kid's bike, a motorbike, the size of a motorbike, a kid through the desert. And I was like, that's not a super long adventure, but that would be totally crazy and wild. And we're always just looking for something, a unique way to travel, be it a week or be it 6 months. So.
How do you go about finding these trips? Is there a website that sort of has, besides ThePlanetD.com, where if you're thinking about like what's a multi-month unusual epic trip, like say, I had never heard of this, riding a bike in Western Africa on a kid's bike, right? Like I didn't
I
know that.
know. I almost start thinking that Google is so good at knowing where your interests are. What's up when you start looking for things, like I'll just always be like, think of a destination I want to go to and then think what is something interesting that I can do there. So I always kind of choose a destination at this point now, like you guys and a lot of people on here, we've been to a lot of destinations around the world. So we're going, where's the next place we want to go and what is cool and unique to do there. So I'll start with the destination first and then see like I can literally do like epic adventure or crazy overland adventures. And I do think that Google is starting to understand us. Like
well, the Adventurists is also another great place. They have all kind of crazy trips that they put together, and there's actually a forum and a Facebook group that you can join, which is great, which we did afterwards. So you can get different ideas of what crazy things people have done around the world, and finding different communities on Facebook and different places that you can that have your same interests, because it's kind of crazy really to think about adventures that people have done that you would have never have thought of had you not been in different groups. So basically sourcing different communities is the best way to find out something unique.
Yeah, you can start with looking at the adventurists. They actually do. I didn't even know that they do this now, but they have the horse trek across Mongolia. Right. So maybe we'll do that with them, and we don't work with the adventurists or the Tour d'Afrique or anyone. This is just like, these were all funds ourselves that we paid for ourselves that we didn't, we are not affiliated. So we just search them. The Tour d'Afrique, they actually have all around the world now. They have the Silk Route.
If you're into cycling.
Yeah, if you're doing cycling. And, the Lure of the North, Kai and Dave, they're a couple that's way up in Northern Canada. They do routes all over the place. So you start there and then branch out when we join outdoor clubs and talk to people. We're in a cycling club here in Toronto and talk to people with what they're doing. The possibilities of finding things are just endless once you start looking. And our blog has quite a bit on it of ideas too.
And I always say, like,
make a resource page of that. That's a good idea.
I always say, start off with what your interest is. Like if you're interested in cycling, hiking, kayaking, paddling, whatever it may be, there's always communities for those. So those are great places to source out, what kind of things you can do in different destinations, whether it be longer trips or shorter trips.
There's kittens here in the hostel, so everybody
I hear them.
Oohing and ahhing over there. Yeah, the rescue kittens. So everyone is deeply enthralled by them. One of them just opened their eyes. So I see a ton of questions from people.
Wonderful.
I just turned on questions. And sorry, I didn't look at them till now. I just saw down below chat. Oops.
So Erica is going to coordinate all the questions. I'm going to stay muted because of the commotion here. I mean, kittens.
Awesome. It's exciting. You're traveling.
So take it away, Erica.
Awesome. I'm going to just sort through these because we have so many questions. That was an incredible presentation. I feel like my face was in a frozen state of shock.
Thanks. I love looking at your face. You're so supportive and like your energy is so amazing. You're just always smiling.
This is also how I watch TV. I'm like,
I hear you.
Okay, so Talik has a bunch of questions when it comes to sponsors, because I know you got some sponsors for a trip before you even had a blog. So what does a sponsor want to see from you that will motivate them to sponsor you? And how much would you like, how do you know how much to ask for?
Yeah, that's a great question. When sponsors want to see what they can get out from you, like they need value. And it doesn't need to be that you have 1 million followers. We got sponsors when we had no followers, but we made sure that we could give them some sort of value. Like with the Mongol Rally, we maybe had, how many people were following us at the time? Maybe 5,000 people, but we could, we had stickers to add on the car. We could make sure that we secured interviews like we did. We approached CBC, we approached CTV, and we were doing regular updates without any kind of following or social media, and people are always looking for those stories, even if we did locals Rogers television in all around Ontario, so like that can be a start, and you can start with your small sponsors first. Our very first sponsor was lube lube oil for our bikes, bike lube. I can't remember the name of it. And I was so excited to get a whole case of bike lube, you know, and then I could put on our website, sponsored by,
Yeah, exactly.
you know. So you don't think big at first. You got to start small, because you're not going to get the thousands of dollar sponsorship if you don't have a following, but you want to start building.
Also think of different ways. I mean, we when we did the Mongol Rally, we partnered with Intrepid Travel. Intrepid Travel didn't give us any money, but what they did is they gave us a trip to give away, and we used that exposure to raise money that allowed us to pay for the gas for our trip. And the exposure for them was not only just having some promotion on our site, but giving away the trip as well as everybody else's site. So partnering with other people is a good idea as well. But they also got, you know, that we're driving billboard for 6 weeks all through those countries that we were in. So they found value in that. It's sort of all how you sell that value. So,
and I know maybe we're a little too easygoing as blogs, but people approach us a lot and say, I'm doing this epic trip. Can I write for you about it? And, you know, someone wrote about the Mongol Rally from something, the Baco Rally. Anyway, it was from Budapest to Dakar. And I was like, that's an awesome thing. I want you to write for me for it. Like, so they got exposure on our blog, because first of all, I thought it was cool, and I'll probably do it one day.
And then they can leverage that.
And then they can leverage that. You know, it doesn't hurt to reach out. Now, I don't go bombarding everybody out there, but you can bombard us. We kind of like it if there's a really cool idea, then we'll probably join you. You know,
I was gonna say,
like
beware.
There's so many ways to leverage. Like, people are emailing all the time saying, can you just help me promote this? And why not help people promote? Because you know, the world's a cool, fun place, people. So leverage what you have. You know, like I said, I went to my local newspaper of a 600 people town, and they wrote about us and got on the front page, you know, and I was like, you know, look at us with wearing all of our sponsors and things like that. So that just showed sponsors. There's some value there, you know.
Amazing. Amazing. Austin has a sweet question.
Have all the confidence in the world.
Yeah. Austin has a sweet question. It says, he said, you both seem very motivated for adventure travel. How do you get and stay motivated? He has a spouse that loves the idea of bold adventures like yours, but the closer we get, the what ifs and leaving creature comforts like overcome, and they end up not going on adventures. So how do you stay motivated?
I think the best thing to do, especially if you're traveling with a spouse or somebody else who is not as motivated as you for adventure travel, is to start really small and introduce them into what adventure can be like. But it doesn't have to be something crazy. I know you may want to do that, but by taking the smaller steps, and especially if you're traveling with somebody else, it's going to make it that much more enjoyable for sure.
And another thing we've done whenever we've done an epic adventure is we tell everyone. When we did the Mongol Rally, we recorded it that day. We were, you know, having some drinks and went, let's put it out on social media. There's no turning back. The minute we decided to do the Tour d'Afrique, I went to work and told them, I'm not going to be here next year. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to cycle Africa, you know, and people were like, what? And that really made us accountable. You know, once we did it, we couldn't turn back. And believe me, there's many times where we're going, what the heck are we doing? Many times where I thought, oh my gosh, I've just spent all this money and I'm ruining my life. But by following through, it really changes your entire life. It really does.
Yeah, it really does. And if you are traveling with a spouse, just think about compromise, right? Why not do a trade-off? Say, you know what, if you would do something like this, like adventurous with me, then maybe, you know, I don't know, I'll go to the spa with you or whatever it may be. If it's
that's what I say to Dave when I ask him to do an adventure with me.
Now it's the other way around. Now I ask her to come to the spa with me.
I love it. I love it. Carla is wondering, do you have a regular home or somewhere where you return after these adventures?
Yeah, we didn't for almost a decade, but just before COVID, we bought a house. So we've been locked down. We're in Canada. We're still quite locked down. So we've been living in our home, and it was amazing because we moved in like last June to our own place, and it's been fun, but we're really itching to get on the road again now. But I do like having a house now because
having a home base to come home to. Yeah.
But definitely. I wouldn't change the 10 years. People used to say to us all the time, how on earth do you do it? And I would be like, how do I not do this? I love it. You know, so who knows? We've been talking this past year that maybe we'll sell the house again and hit the road. I don't know. We're those type of people.
Yeah. You definitely are. We have some practical questions. One is, how do you keep your batteries and electronics charged throughout these crazy long adventures in the middle of nowhere?
Solar.
Yeah, solar. So I use solar chargers that I bring with me with adapters to charge whenever we're going. It wasn't too bad in Africa in that there were stretches in the very beginning where I really needed the solar chargers, but as we got further south, I could make my batteries last. If they last like maybe 3 or 4 days, I could get to a hotel and charge them. But I always carry a solar charger with me when I'm doing the epic stuff, especially like trekking up north in Canada where there was no power and nothing there for the whole entire thing, and we're filming and photographing it as well. So it's a challenge, but
and in the cold, of course, keep
cold.
it close to you. Like we never have our batteries camera. It's always like take them out, keep them close to your body, and then take them out. And we always have little. We carry a lot, way too much electronic gear because we have little chargers as well.
We charge up little power packs because all of our cameras now charge via USB. So that's a big bonus.
And then when we get somewhere, we can charge those up. So we'll have several days of charging just from USB.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot. But I'm glad you figured it out. We have a question about how you manage healthcare or medical issues.
Oh yeah, we've had a lot. we joke that we've been in the hospital on 5 continents. So in Africa, I took a fall and got a bad knee infection and got something called cellulitis where my leg I had a full blood infection on my leg. And we have good medical insurance wherever we go. And I went to hospitals in Tanzania and Malawi and, kept getting x-rays and figuring it out. And they're like, it's an infection. Anyway, took a lot of pills and painkillers throughout that one. Dave has broken his back in the Amazon, and we've had good medical insurance again, where we had airlifted and air medical evacuation insurance. We highly recommend that if you're going to do adventures. You do need, when you are doing adventures, make sure that you're covered for those, because a lot of regular travels won't cover extreme adventures.
It could be a separate rider, or they don't cover it at all. So just make sure that you're aware of what your travel insurance policy covers, because you don't want to get injured and then find out that you're not covered. That's
a good thing. Like MedJet is really good because they don't ask questions. They'll come and fly you out, no
matter where you are,
to
get you home.
It's not medical, but they'll fly you home. So something like that, if you really want to look into that, because things do happen. We've always had medical issues in our adventures. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're klutzes or idiots, but
maybe that's it.
I can only imagine. That is crazy, but I'm sure those are part of your epic adventures, all these hospital visits.
Yeah, they're a whole other one. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. So I will leave it off with John's question last, which is, do you have any tips for finding a local guide or tour company for off the beaten path adventures?
Yeah, that's the way we've always found people, and we've had some of our greatest adventures by taking the bus to the place and walking around. We've had some great adventures for local tour companies that way.
Yeah, I find that if depending on how adventurous you are, we're a big fan of not necessarily booking a trip beforehand or anything like that, and going and showing up in the destination and finding guides by recommendations of people who are there, whether it be in a hostel that you're staying at, or even just going through different companies that are in the destination, rather than sort of just relying on maybe like a G Adventures or an Intrepid or something like that.
Which they're great too.
Depending on your level of comfort, basically finding them is about having the time to do it and putting in the effort to go and ask around and find out who does what. Hopefully you're in a destination where the adventure is relatively accessible, so that you can find people to do that.
Yeah, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and to Everest Base Camp with local guides. So we landed at Kilimanjaro Airport, hopped in a cab and said, do you know any good guides? And we went and negotiated. It was amazing. And we had the best guides.
Yeah.
Like, we were a ragtag, ridiculous group of people, but I think we had the best guides on the mountain. And when we did Everest, we just walked around Kathmandu looking for shops, and the one that gave us the best feeling.
Yeah.
We ended up not going with that that company, but we went with the guide we met personally, privately.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was stuff like that. I just find if you have the time, you can really find some great local guides that way.
All right. Before we end this session, I have a question of my own, which I'm going to ask on behalf of the single travelers in the audience. How did you find each other? Because you guys seem like a perfect traveling pair, and I think a lot of people want to find their travel buddy.
Yes, we met the very unconventional way of
being in a bar. You know, and it really had nothing to do with meeting on the road or anything. We've been together for 30 years. So, you know, for us, it's just sort of been like a slow burn, if you will, when it comes to travel and traveling together.
Yeah.
And, you know, the relationship side of things is a whole other talk about traveling with your spouse and how you can do it and that kind of stuff. But finding someone is just finding someone who has the same interests as you. And it's a lot harder than
well, we didn't even have the same interests at first, and we weren't interested in traveling. We were musicians. Dave was a drummer and I was a singer, hence his hair. Mm-hmm. And we were not interested in travel at all, but we started doing little travels. You know, our first travel, we didn't do anything adventurous at all. We sat on the beach and loved it. And I still do that. I still love it. But then we started adding little adventures into it, and that really changed our life. And it really strengthened our relationship, because we didn't really start traveling until 10 years into our relationship. Yeah. And once we started doing adventures together, we just really had a great time together. It all changed. Yeah, it strengthened everything, and had a lot of fun. And we looked at each other with new and exciting eyes, like we just met all over again.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to close out with a few slides, but while I'm doing this, I would love for you to find the chat again, and I would just love to hear some takeaways from this chat. We saw a ton of adventures. We heard a lot about how you can do this. So whether you want to share where you want to go or something that you just learned, why don't you pop
or invite us on your next trip?
I know. I feel like
we're itching.
I feel like it's, you know, whenever people probably tell you about their adventures, you're like, all right, that sounds cool, and I'll meet you there.
Exactly.
All right.
Matt, we'll come join you in Albania next.
Exactly. All right. Let me just tell you, I saw a few people are here for the first time, so I just wanted to let you know where you could come and find more of these free events that we do. It's at thenomadicnetwork.com/events. We have a ton of events coming up, and they're all listed there. We'd love for you to join us. We also have a book club that we do on the first Wednesday of every month. And the one that we're doing, which is coming up next Wednesday, is with Scott Keys of Scott's Cheap Flights. We're reading and talking about his book, Take More Vacations, which is all about how to find cheap flights. So whether you've read the book or not, you're invited. It's going to be awesome. Nomadic Matt hosts these, so it's a really fun conversation, and we do actually mute everyone like it's a bookshop talk. So it's really cool. And then I would love to invite you again to our exclusive membership community, Nomadic Matt Plus. There is the URL, and you could also use the fancy QR code. If you're a part of this community, you get, like I said before, all of the TNN replays, past, present, and future. We also just started amazing monthly giveaways that are all travel related. And you also get free signed books, guides, t-shirts, access to our courses, an exclusive Facebook group. And it's just a really awesome way to be in deeper with our community. So we would love to invite you to that again. Check it out. And last but not least, I would love to thank you for being a part of our travel community. It was so great to have your questions and to have you here today. I would love to see you next time. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Dave and Deb from ThePlanetD. I have dropped all their social media handles in this chat. So feel free to follow them, DM them, ask them questions, maybe join them on their next epic journey. They have just so much to share, and we're so grateful that you were here today. And I think Matt would like to also say something before we sign off.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all so much for coming. The light is fading here. Getting a better lighting. Thank you all so much for coming. Thanks, Dave and Deb, for doing this and spending your hour with us. It's really, really appreciative. please be sure to check them out and follow them online. We'll send you a follow-up email with all their information and just more information on the things we talked about today. So don't worry if you didn't jot everything down. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go see some kittens, eat some dinner, and Dave and Deb, enjoy your upcoming trip to Switzerland. Everybody, please come next week to our book talk with Scott. Even if you haven't read the book, we're going to discuss a whole bunch of ins and outs of how airlines work and price ticketing works, and it'll be very educational. So I'll see you all again next week.
Awesome. And David,
thanks,
Bye,
guys.
guys. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Dave. Bye, Deb.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.